Welcome, dear listener. Welcome to this quiet space we'll share together tonight. Before we begin our journey, let your body settle wherever you are. Feel the surface beneath you supporting your weight. There's nothing you need to do right now except be here, breathing softly, allowing yourself to rest. Tonight, we're going to drift together through one of Earth's most profound transformations, a time when our planet became almost unrecognizable and then, slowly, gently, found its way back to life. We'll explore what Earth was like after the Great Dying, the largest extinction event our world has ever known. But don't worry about remembering facts or dates. You don't need to follow every word. Simply let the story wash over you like waves on a distant shore. If you drift away, that's perfectly fine. The story will still be here, carrying you softly into rest. Imagine, if you will, standing at the edge of an ancient ocean 252 million years ago. The air is warm against your skin. The world is quiet, waiting, beginning again. We'll walk together through this landscape, slowly, peacefully, discovering what remained and what slowly emerged from the ashes of the old world. Let your breath deepen naturally. Let your eyes grow heavy if they wish. Tonight, you're safe here, floating through deep time, watching as Earth dreamed itself back into abundance. Before we drift further into this ancient world, if this journey brings you peace, I invite you to like and subscribe to this channel, and in the comments below, share with our peaceful community which country you're listening from and what time it is where you are. It's beautiful to know we're all connected across this world, drifting through the same ancient story together, each in our own quiet moment. Now let us begin. Let us travel back to a world that had almost ended and watch together as it learned to breathe again. Picture yourself standing on a beach that extends forever in both directions. The sand beneath your bare feet is warm, darker than the beaches you might know. It has a reddish tint, like rust dissolved into ancient grains. The ocean before you is vast and still, unusually still. The waves lap gently at the shore, but there's something missing. Listen carefully to what you don't hear. No seabirds crying overhead. No scuttling of crabs across the sand. No distant splash of dolphins or whales. The silence is profound, but it isn't frightening. It's the silence of a world resting, recovering, gathering strength for what comes next. This is Earth after the Great Dying, after the Permian-Triassic extinction event, after the moment when 96% of all marine species and 70% of all land species disappeared from the world. But we're not here to witness the dying itself. We're here in the quiet afterward, in the stillness of new beginning. Breathe in slowly. The air is warm, warmer than you might expect. It carries a faint mineral scent, like hot stones after rain. There's more carbon dioxide in this air than in the world you know, making the atmosphere feel heavier, thicker, wrapping around you like a warm blanket. Look up at the sky. It's a deeper blue than you remember, almost purple at the zenith. The sun feels intense but not harsh, just present, constant, bathing this recovering world in light. Turn your attention back to the ocean. The water is clear near the shore and you can see the bottom easily. The sand ripples in patterns sculpted by currents and tides, but the clarity itself tells a story. In a thriving ocean, the water would be cloudier, filled with microscopic life, plankton drifting in countless billions. Here, the water is clear because so much of that life is gone. Not forever though, never forever, just for now, in this moment of great transition. Walk slowly along the shoreline, let the warm water lap at your ankles. Notice how the sand shifts beneath your feet with each wave. These simple physical processes continue. Waves still break. Tides still rise and fall. The moon still pulls at the ocean, just as it always has, just as it always will. In the shallow water you might spot something. A small shell spiraling delicately. Pick it up gently, feel its weight in your palm. This creature survived. Not all the shells disappeared. Some lineages persisted, holding on through the worst of times, carrying the memory of their kind forward into this new era. The shell is a gastropod, a snail from ancient seas. Its ancestors watched the world change. It exists now in a world with far fewer competitors, far fewer predators. In time, its descendants will diversify, will spread, will fill niches left empty by those who couldn't endure. Place the shell back gently into the water. Watch it settle onto the sand. Even this small act feels significant here, in this quiet world. Continue walking. Your footprints mark the sand behind you, the first marks of their kind, then washed away by the next wave, erased and made new again. The beach demonstrates this eternal truth. Nothing is permanent, everything transforms, and transformation itself is a kind of continuity. Far down the beach, you notice a dark line in the sand. As you approach slowly, peacefully, you see it's a strand of something organic. Algae, perhaps, or the remnant of some simple marine organism. It's been washed ashore by the tide and now lies baking gently in the sun. This too is life persisting. Algae and bacteria survive the great dying in greater proportions than more complex life. They form the foundation now, these simple organisms, these quiet workers. They're already beginning the work of recovery, processing sunlight, releasing oxygen, creating the base of food webs that will eventually support entire ecosystems once more. Kneel down beside this dark strand. Notice how the sand has begun to build up around it, tiny dunes forming in the shelter it provides. Even the smallest presence creates ripples, creates possibilities, creates change. The wind picks up slightly warm and dry, carrying the scent of distant lands. It whispers across the beach, and in its whisper, you might imagine you hear the breathing of the planet itself. Slow, deep, recuperating. This wind comes from a world that's been transformed. The continents have merged into a single vast supercontinent called Pangaea. Almost all of Earth's land pressed together into one enormous mass, surrounded by a single global ocean called Panthalassa. The geography of this world is nothing like the world you know, with its scattered continents and distinct ocean basins. Stand up slowly. Brush the sand from your hands. Look inland, away from the ocean. The landscape rises gradually, moving from coastal plain toward distant highlands. The terrain is rocky, sparse. In the far distance, mountains rise against the purple-blue sky. Those mountains are young and sharp, their peaks dramatic against the horizon. The collision of continents that created Pangaea pushed up enormous mountain ranges, and they're still relatively fresh, not yet worn down by ages of wind and rain. But between here and those mountains, the land seems almost empty. There are plants, yes, but they're scattered, struggling. The landscape has a harsh, exposed quality. Without the dense vegetation that would have covered much of the land before the extinction, the soil erodes easily, washing down toward the sea in rusty, mineral-rich streams. Notice your breathing. It's steady, calm, matching the rhythm of the waves. There's no hurry here. Time moves differently in this ancient world. 1,000 years is like a moment. A moment contains 1,000 possibilities. Turn back toward the ocean. The sun is beginning to lower toward the horizon, though in your journey through time, the length of days and nights need not constrain you. The light grows golden, then amber, painting the water in warm tones. Sit down on the sand. Feel it still warm beneath you, retaining the heat of the day. Rest here for a moment. Let your body relax completely. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw loosens. Your breath flows in and out like the tides themselves. This beach, this moment in deep time, is your anchor for now. You're safe here. The world is quiet, but it's not empty. It's resting, recovering, dreaming of what it will become. In the water before you, the sun's reflection shimmers and dances. Beneath that surface, in the depths you cannot see from here, life persists. In the deep ocean trenches, in the scattered reefs, in the open water, creatures go on existing, go on reproducing, go on adapting to their changed world. The great dying happened, yes, but after every ending comes a beginning. After every loss comes the possibility of renewal. Earth doesn't give up. Life doesn't surrender. They simply continue, finding new forms, new pathways, new expressions of the fundamental drive to exist. Rest here on this ancient shore. Let the warmth soak into you. Let the gentle sound of the waves lull you deeper into relaxation. Your breathing slows further. Your thoughts drift like clouds across that deep blue sky. You don't need to understand everything you're experiencing. You don't need to remember every detail. Just be here, in this quiet space between what was and what will be. Be here in the stillness of recovery, in the patient certainty that life finds its way. The beach stretches on forever to your left and right. The ocean extends to the horizon. Above you, the first stars are beginning to appear in the darkening sky. They're the same stars in different configurations that shine above your own time, constant in their way, even as their patterns shift across the millennia. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Feel the sand beneath you, the warm air around you, the gentle presence of this recovering world. You're witnessing something profound here, something that teaches patience, teaches resilience, teaches hope. After the great dying, Earth began again, and you're here in this liminal space, this quiet moment, watching the first soft stirrings of that beginning. Rest now. Breathe slowly. The story continues gentle and patient while you drift in the warm embrace of deep time. Let yourself sink deeper into the sand beneath you. Feel how it supports you, how millions of tiny grains work together to create this soft foundation. In the same way, we'll explore now how millions of tiny chemical processes work together to help Earth recover from its greatest catastrophe. But we'll explore this gently, weaving science with poetry, understanding with sensation. Imagine that you can see into the water before you in a new way, not just the surface, but the very composition of it. If you could perceive molecules, you'd see water molecules dancing, H2O, in endless abundance, each one a tiny bent shape, oxygen holding hands with two hydrogen atoms. But there's something different about this ancient ocean. Mixed into the water are higher concentrations of dissolved carbon dioxide than the oceans of your time would hold. The water has become more acidic, just slightly, enough to dissolve the calcium carbonate shells of many creatures, enough to make building those shells much more difficult for those species that survived. Picture the ocean as if it were breathing in reverse, absorbing carbon dioxide that had been released from volcanic eruptions during the extinction event. The water becomes a solution, both literally and in the sense of healing. It slowly absorbs the excess gas, gradually helping to restore balance to the atmosphere above. This process is so slow you couldn't perceive it in a human lifetime. But here, in this timeless space, imagine you can feel it happening. Each wave that breaks absorbs a whisper of carbon dioxide. Each moment of contact between air and water creates a tiny transaction, a small movement toward equilibrium. Breathe with this rhythm. As you inhale, imagine the ocean absorbing. As you exhale, imagine the slow release and transformation. Your breath and the ocean's breath, separated by millions of years, still following the same patterns of give and take, of balance sought and gradually achieved. The temperature of this world is warmer than the Permian world that came before. The extinction event itself was partially triggered by warming, by a cascade of environmental changes that made the planet hostile to most life. Now, in the aftermath, the warmth persists. Feel that warmth on your skin. It's not uncomfortable, just present. The average global temperature is perhaps 8 to 10 degrees Celsius warmer than your modern world. The polar regions, rather than being locked in ice, are temperate. There are no permanent ice caps on Earth during this time. This warmth has effects that ripple through every system. Warm water holds less dissolved oxygen than cold water. The oceans of this time, especially in their deeper reaches, contain less oxygen than the oceans you know. This creates zones where oxygen-dependent life struggles, where only specially adapted creatures can survive. But again, this is not forever. It's a condition of the time, and time itself is the healer. Slowly, gradually, the systems will adjust. Algae and cyanobacteria, those ancient oxygen producers, continue their patient work of photosynthesis, splitting water molecules, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. Imagine you can see this happening. In the sunlit water before you, microscopic organisms drift so small they're individually invisible, but collectively they're performing the alchemy that maintains all complex life. They capture photons from the sun, use that energy to build sugars, and release oxygen in the process. Each tiny release is insignificant, but multiply it by billions upon billions of organisms across millions of square miles of ocean, continuing day after day after day, and you have the great engine of planetary healing. Your own breathing continues, steady and slow, in and out. Like those ancient organisms, you're part of the great cycle of gases, breathing in what the world provides, breathing out what other organisms need. The atmosphere of this post-extinction world is different in other ways too. There's less oxygen than you're accustomed to, perhaps 16% of the atmosphere compared to 21% in your time. This affects everything. Animals must work harder to extract the oxygen they need. This limits how large they can grow, how active they can be. But it doesn't stop life. It simply shapes it, guides it, influences the forms it takes. Lie back on the sand now. Look up at the sky, which has deepened to twilight. The stars are becoming clearer, brighter. The air between you and those stars is thicker with carbon dioxide, thinner with oxygen, but the starlight still reaches you, still connects you across the vastness of space and time. In this atmosphere, clouds form differently. Weather patterns shift and flow in ways both familiar and strange. The single great continent of Pangaea creates a massive interior region, far from any moderating ocean influence. This leads to extreme conditions, severe seasons, intense monsoons near the coasts, and arid deserts deep in the interior. But here, on this coastal region where you rest, the climate is more moderate. The ocean's presence tempers the extremes. The temperature stays relatively stable. The conditions, while harsh by the standards of the Permian world that came before, are stable enough that life can adapt, can find footholds, can begin to diversify again. Think of the ocean as a great buffer, a reservoir of stability. It absorbs heat slowly, releases it slowly. It moderates temperatures, provides moisture to coastal areas, creates conditions where recovery can occur. The chemistry of recovery is patient chemistry. There are no quick fixes in deep time. The excess carbon dioxide will take millions of years to be fully absorbed and locked away again in rocks and organic matter. The oxygen levels will slowly rise as photosynthetic organisms continue their work across the ages. The ocean's acidity will gradually moderate as the carbon dioxide is removed from the system. But these slow changes are reliable. They're driven by fundamental physical and chemical processes that don't depend on luck or chance. They're as certain as the tide that continues to wash up the beach toward where you lie, then retreat, then return again. Feel your body relaxing more deeply now. Your muscles release their tension, your mind drifts, thoughts becoming less distinct, more dreamlike. In the soil beneath the sand where you rest, minerals dissolve and move with water. Iron compounds give the earth its rusty red color. These same compounds eventually wash into the ocean, where they provide nutrients for simple organisms. Everything connects. Everything flows into everything else. The sulfur released by the volcanic eruptions that helped cause the extinction, that sulfur too is gradually being removed from the system. Some is absorbed by the ocean, some reacts with minerals in the rocks, some is taken up by organisms and incorporated into their tissues. The sharp, acrid smell that would have characterized the worst of the extinction is fading, dispersed across the enormity of the atmosphere, diluted by time and distance. Imagine breathing that clearer air. With each breath, you're breathing in the gift of time, the healing that comes simply from the continuation of fundamental processes. You don't have to do anything. The healing happens on its own, patient and inevitable. The Great Dying was caused, scientists believe, by a cascade of events, massive volcanic eruptions in what would one day be Siberia, releasing vast quantities of carbon dioxide and other gases, global warming triggered by those gases, ocean acidification, and oxygen depletion, the release of methane from the seafloor, creating a runaway greenhouse effect, each problem compounding the others, cascading into catastrophe. But here, after the worst has passed, the cascade runs in reverse. Slowly, hesitantly at first, but with gathering momentum. Less volcanic activity means less input of gases. Cooling begins, gradual but real. The ocean absorbs the excess carbon. Oxygen producers gain a foothold. The methane, reactive and short-lived, breaks down in the atmosphere. The cascade toward recovery begins. It's not fast. If you were to live a human lifetime here, you wouldn't perceive the changes, but you're not bound by a single lifetime in this dream journey. You can sense the trajectory, the directionality, the slow but certain movement toward a new equilibrium. Rest in that certainty, let it ease any worry or tension you might carry. The earth knows how to heal itself. Life knows how to persist, adapt, spread, diversify. These processes are older than any mountain, more reliable than any human construct. Your breathing has become very slow now, deep and effortless. You're not making it happen, it's simply happening through you. Like the chemical processes of this ancient world, your breath continues automatically, a gift of your biology, a connection to all other breathing things across all of time. The temperature of the sand beneath you matches your body temperature now. You can't tell where your body ends and the earth begins. You're part of this world, this moment, this gentle unfolding of deep time. Above you, the Milky Way is becoming visible, a river of light across the dark sky. Those stars, those distant suns, have their own planets perhaps, their own stories of catastrophe and recovery. You're connected to all of it, part of a universe that tends toward complexity, toward life, toward beauty emerging from chaos. The waves continue their eternal rhythm, soft sounds regular as a heartbeat. You might imagine they're saying something with each retreat and return. Maybe they're saying, patience, patience, all will be well, patience, rest, patience, patience. Let those words or that wordless rhythm lull you deeper still. You're safe here on this ancient shore. The world is recovering around you. The chemistry of life is reasserting itself, molecule by molecule, reaction by reaction, breath by breath. You don't need to stay awake. You don't need to follow every detail. The story continues whether you're consciously listening or drifting in the spaces between sleep and waking. Either way is perfect. Either way, you're exactly where you need to be. The night deepens. The air cools slightly but remains warm. Somewhere far down the beach, if you were to listen very carefully, you might hear the soft sound of water dripping from a rock, forming a small pool in the tidal zone. Life gathers in those pools. simple organisms that will give rise to more complex forms in the ages to come. But for now, rest. Let the chemistry of your own body do its healing work. Let sleep come if it wishes. Let this story carry you into the deepest peace. The earth after the great dying is a world of potential, of possibility, of the certainty that life finds ways forward that we cannot always predict, but can always trust. Rest in that trust. Breathe with the ancient ocean. Be held by the warm sand of deep time. All is well. All will be well. Patience. Rest. In the space between waking and sleeping, where you float now so peacefully, let's meet the first creatures to truly thrive again after the great dying. We'll encounter them slowly, gently, like memories surfacing in a dream. You're still resting on that warm beach, the sand cradling your body, the sound of waves providing a constant, soothing rhythm. The night has deepened, but there's enough starlight that you can still perceive the world around you, soft and dreamlike. Imagine now that you can shrink your perception, make it very small, and enter the shallow water at the edge of the tide. The water is warm, almost bath water warm, and you're suspended in it, floating without effort, completely supported. Here, in the shallows, are some of the first returners, not the biggest or the most impressive, but the persistent ones, the patient ones, the organisms that prove life's fundamental determination to continue. Drifting near you in the water, imagine you can see a brachiopod. It's small, no bigger than your thumbnail if you still had your regular size. Its shell is hinged, 2 valves that open and close, though very slowly, almost imperceptibly. It sits on the sandy bottom, filtering the water for microscopic food particles. Brachiopods existed long before the Great Dying. They were abundant in the Permian seas in countless varieties. Most of those varieties didn't survive the extinction, but this one did. Its ancestors made it through somehow, somewhere, in some refuge where conditions remained just barely tolerable. Now, in these early Triassic seas, it's one of the survivors, quietly going about its existence, filtering water, growing slowly, reproducing when it can. It's not trying to be a hero. It's simply being itself, doing what brachiopods do. And in doing so, it's helping rebuild the web of life. Feel a sense of kinship with this small creature. You too are simply being yourself, breathing, existing, doing what you do. There's no need to be more than you are. Your simple existence is already enough, already valuable, already part of something larger. Drift further into the dream water. The light here is dim but warm, filtered through the ocean's surface, scattered by the water itself. Everything is soft-edged, gentle, peaceful. Near the brachiopod, you notice something moving slowly across the sand. It's a gastropod, a snail similar to the one whose shell you found on the beach. It's going about its business, rasping algae from rocks with its tiny tongue-like radula, leaving a microscopic trail behind it. Gastropods too survived the Great Dying in greater numbers than many other groups. Their simple body plan, their ability to exist in a wide range of conditions, their efficient use of resources, all these things made them resilient when resilience mattered most. Watch it move so slowly you can barely perceive the motion. There's something deeply peaceful about its pace. It's not rushed. It has nowhere else to be but here, nothing else to do but continue. In its unhurried progress across the seafloor, there's a kind of wisdom. Your own thoughts are moving at about this pace now. Slow, drifting, not quite thoughts anymore, but something softer, more fluid. Images and feelings rather than words. This is good. This is exactly right. Let yourself move at gastropod pace through this story. In the water around you, if you expand your awareness, you might sense the presence of countless microscopic organisms. Plankton, though not the abundant clouds of plankton that will eventually fill these seas again, just scattered individuals and small groups drifting with currents, feeding on sunlight and dissolved nutrients. Among them are foraminifera, single-celled organisms that build tiny shells from calcium carbonate. Most foraminifera species went extinct during the Great Dying, but a few survived. Now they're beginning to diversify again, slowly exploring the possibilities of the empty niches around them. Each forum is infinitesimally small, invisible to unaided eyes, but together they'll eventually form massive deposits on the seafloor, their shells accumulating across millions of years, layer upon layer, eventually becoming limestone rocks that will build mountains in the far future. There's something profound about this. The smallest organisms, the most overlooked, are literally building the structure of the planet's surface. Their tiny shells, their microscopic efforts, accumulate into something vast and permanent. Your own small efforts, whatever they are, also accumulate. Each breath you take, each moment of kindness, each small thing you create or contribute, all of it matters. All of it adds up. All of it becomes part of something larger than you can see in the moment. Rest in that knowledge. Let it ease any sense of your own inadequacy. You're enough. Your small actions are enough. Like the foraminifera, you're contributing to something vast simply by being what you are. Drift now toward the deeper water, just beyond the breaking waves. Here, the bottom drops away somewhat, creating a gentle slope into the depths. The light grows dimmer, but you can still perceive the creatures here. Moving slowly through the water, you might catch a glimpse of something fish-like. It's small, primitive by the standards of fish that will come later, but it's unmistakably a fish. Its scales catch the faint light. Its fins move with efficient, unhurried strokes. Fish survived the Great Dying better than many other groups, though they too suffered losses. This one is likely a member of a group that will diversify greatly in the millions of years to come. Its ancestors were among the hardy ones, the adaptable ones, the ones that could tolerate low oxygen levels and changing conditions. Watch it swim for a moment, then let it disappear into the darker water beyond. It's going about its life, finding food, avoiding danger, eventually reproducing. The basic drives that animated its ancestors still animate it. The Great Dying changed the world, but it didn't change these fundamental patterns. Life continues to seek life. Return now to shallower water, back toward the comfort of the beach. Let the current carry you gently. You don't have to swim or make any effort. Just float, supported, safe. On the rocky areas near the shore where the sand gives way to stone, algae are beginning to grow more abundantly. They form thin films of green and brown, coating the rocks, creating habitat and food for other organisms. This is how it begins. Simple photosynthetic organisms establishing themselves, creating the foundation for everything else. They're not glamorous. They're not the creatures that will eventually get featured in books or museums. But they're essential. They're primary. Lie back in the water, floating face up now, supported by the warm sea. The stars above you are perfect in their steadiness. The water rocks you gently, a motion you barely notice, so smooth and constant is it. In this floating state, this perfect relaxation, understand that you're witnessing the humility of recovery. The first returners aren't the biggest or the strongest. They're the persistent ones, the adaptable ones, the ones content to be small, to work slowly, to succeed simply by continuing to exist. After catastrophe, whether planetary or personal, recovery begins with these small steps, not grand gestures or dramatic transformations, but simple continuation. Getting up, going on, doing the next small thing. Your breathing is so slow now, so deep and effortless. Each breath is a small success. Each moment of rest is a healing. You don't have to recover all at once. You don't have to transform dramatically. You just have to be here, breathing, continuing. The first returners teach this lesson without meaning to. They're not trying to teach anything. They're simply living, and in their living they demonstrate that existence itself is an achievement, that perseverance itself is a victory. Let this lesson sink into you deeper than words, deeper than conscious thought. Let it settle into your body, your cells, your very being. You are enough. Your simple continuation is enough. Your presence here, now, breathing softly, is enough. The water grows slightly cooler, a gentle reminder that the night is deepening. The coolness is pleasant, refreshing without being uncomfortable. It helps you relax even further if that's possible. Your body temperature adjusts effortlessly. You're part of this environment now, not separate from it. In the darkest part of the water, beyond where you float, deeper than the light reaches, other life continues. There are zones in the ocean where oxygen is so low that only specialized organisms can survive. Bacteria that can metabolize sulfur instead of oxygen. Organisms with extremely efficient metabolisms that can extract every bit of energy from scarce resources. These deep water survivors are important too, though they're hardest to see, hardest to understand. They represent the extremophiles, the life that exists at the margins, in the difficult places. They remind us that life doesn't just exist where conditions are optimal. It finds ways to exist almost anywhere, in almost any conditions. You don't have to go to those dark places now. You're safe in the shallower water, in the gentler conditions, but it's good to know they're there, those dark zones of persistence. Sometimes, in the difficult parts of any recovery, you have to persist in the dark for a while, waiting for conditions to improve, making do with what little you have. But even in those times, you're still alive, still continuing, and eventually conditions do improve. The light returns, the oxygen increases. What was barely survivable becomes merely difficult, then tolerable, then perhaps even comfortable. Time is the ally of the first returners. Given enough time, given enough patience, given enough simple persistence, the difficult becomes possible and the possible becomes actual. Float now back toward the shore. The sand comes up to meet you. The waves grow shallow, barely moving. You're in the calm water, right at the edge of the beach, where the ocean kisses the land so gently you can barely tell where one ends and the other begins. Stand up slowly in this shallow water. It's only ankle deep here. Walk slowly toward the beach, each step deliberate and slow, giving yourself time to adjust to the sense of weight returning to your body. Sit down again at the edge of the water, where the waves can just barely reach you. Feel how your body is supported by both the sand and the water, both earth and sea together, holding you, keeping you safe. The first returners are all around you, though most are too small to see. In the water, in the sand, in the rocks, on the sparse vegetation that clings to the slopes beyond the beach. All of them continuing, all of them persisting, all of them, through their simple existence, rebuilding the world. You are like them. You too are a returner, coming back to rest, coming back to peace, continuing despite difficulties, persisting with quiet determination. Close your eyes now if they're not already closed. Rest your head on your hands or on a pillow of sand that forms itself perfectly to support you. The waves continue their rhythm, the stars continue their patient watching. The night continues its gentle embrace. The first returners don't need your awareness to continue their work. They'll go on existing whether you're watching or sleeping. The story continues whether you're consciously following it or drifting in dreams. So drift if you need to. Sleep if sleep comes. The ancient ocean will still be here. The patient survivors will still be doing their work. And when you wake, whether in moments or hours, they'll still be here, teaching their quiet lessons of persistence and patience. Rest now. Breathe softly. Be held by this ancient world, this recovering earth, this moment of peace in deep time. The first returners welcome you to their world. They ask nothing of you but your presence. They offer nothing but their example, and their example is enough. More than enough. Rest. In the softness of your rest, on the boundary between sleep and waking where all the best stories live, let's explore a gentle mystery. Something puzzling, but not disturbing. Something that invites curiosity without demanding alertness. You're still on that ancient beach, supported by warm sand, soothed by the rhythm of waves. But now, in this dreamlike state, you can also perceive the land beyond the shore. Not by moving there, but by extending your awareness, like looking through soft focus, seeing without trying. Imagine the landscape rising from the coast into hills and eventually distant mountains. The rocks are exposed in many places, wearing their rusty reds and browns. And scattered across this landscape occasionally are plants, but they seem sparse compared to what should be there. Scattered where there should be forests. Here is the mystery. In the rocks laid down during the millions of years after the Great Dying, geologists find something curious. Or rather, they don't find something, they call it the coal gap. Coal, as you might know in a distant, dreamy way, forms from plant matter. When plants die and are buried in swamps and wetlands, when the conditions are right over millions of years, their compressed and chemically altered remains become coal. Throughout much of Earth's history, coal deposits mark times when plants were abundant, when forests were thick, when wetlands were productive. The late Carboniferous period, about 300 million years ago, created enormous coal deposits. Plants were thriving, growing, dying, accumulating. But after the Great Dying, for roughly 10 million years, almost no coal forms. The coal gap. As if the forests paused, as if the great abundance of plant life went on hiatus, as if Earth forgot for a geologic moment how to make these deposits. Why, what does this absence mean? Let the question drift through your mind gently, without urgency. There's no test, no need to remember the answer. Just let the mystery settle around you like the night air. Scientists have several ideas, several poetic hypotheses about this gap in the black seams of deep time. First, perhaps there simply weren't that many plants. The Great Dying affected life on land too. The forests of the Permian, dominated by seed ferns and early conifers, were damaged. Species went extinct, ecosystems collapsed. The plants that survived faced a changed world with harsh conditions, less predictable rainfall, and degraded soils. Picture a forest not as a dense growth but as scattered trees, individuals standing apart from each other, islands of green in a landscape mostly brown and red, not dead but sparse, not absent but diminished. In such a world, when plants died, there might not have been enough accumulation to form significant deposits. The dead vegetation would decompose quickly in the warm climate, broken down by bacteria and fungi, return to the soil or atmosphere rather than buried and preserved. Rest in this image of scattered trees. There's something poetic about it. Each tree standing alone, doing its best, not yet able to form the interconnected forests that would come later. Solitary, but not without hope. Your breathing continues, steady and slow, like the patient growth of these surviving plants. They're not in a hurry. They have millions of years to figure things out. The second idea is about wetlands. Coal forms best in swamps, in waterlogged lowlands, where dead plant material piles up and is quickly buried by sediment, protected from decomposition. But after the Great Dying, these wetlands might have been less common or less retry-n-continue-edit stable. The climate was hot and often dry in the interior of Pangaea. Rainfall patterns were disrupted. Rivers might have flowed more sporadically, flooding violently during monsoons, then drying to trickles. The stable, permanent wetlands that are ideal for coal formation might have been rare. Picture water flowing across the landscape, but irregularly. Not the constant seep and saturation of a healthy swamp, but flash floods followed by dry periods. Plant matter washed away or dried out rather than accumulating in thick, preservable layers. Let this image flow through your mind like water itself. Nothing holding still long enough to accumulate. Everything moving, changing, not yet settled into patterns that persist. This too is part of recovery. Before stability returns, there's often a period of flux, of systems trying different configurations, of nothing quite settling into reliable patterns. It's uncomfortable perhaps, but it's also necessary. The world is searching for its new equilibrium. You don't need to search for anything right now. You're already at rest, already at peace. Let the world do its searching while you simply observe, gently, from this place of deep calm. The third idea involves the fungi and bacteria, the decomposers. In a healthy ecosystem, there's a balance between the rate at which plant matter accumulates and the rate at which decomposers break it down. For coal to form, accumulation must outpace decomposition. After the Great Dying, some scientists suggest that decomposers might have been more active relative to plant growth. Perhaps the warm climate favored them. Perhaps the stressed plants were more susceptible to being broken down quickly. Perhaps the balance had simply shifted temporarily in favor of decay over preservation. There's something both melancholy and hopeful in this thought. The decomposers were doing their job, recycling nutrients, making them available for new growth. Nothing was truly lost, just transformed, returned to circulation. Death feeding life, as it always does, in the great cycles of matter and energy. Your own body knows these cycles. Every breath you take, every molecule that makes up your being, has been part of countless other organisms before you. You're made of recycled stars, recycled seas, recycled ancient forests. Nothing is truly new, and nothing is truly lost. Everything transforms. Rest in this continuity. You're part of something so much larger and older than your individual life, connected to everything that has ever been and everything that will be. The coal gap, this absence in the rocks, this pause in the black seams, tells a story of disruption but also of continuation. The forests were sparse, but they existed. The wetlands were unstable, but they formed. The decomposers were active, but plants still grew. It's a story of systems out of balance, struggling to find their footing, taking time to re-establish the patterns that had existed before. But here's the gentle wonder at the heart of this mystery. The coal gap ends. Eventually, around 10 million years after the Great Dying, coal deposits begin to appear again in the rock record. The forests returned to greater density. The wetlands stabilized. The balance between growth and decay shifted back toward preservation. Recovery wasn't instant, but it was real. The gap was filled, not quickly, but inevitably. Imagine now that you can see time flowing like a river. The coal gap is a stretch where the river runs shallow and fast over rocks, unable to deposit the sediment it carries. But downstream, the river deepens and slows and once again begins to lay down thick layers of material on its bed. Time flows on, conditions change. What was difficult becomes easier. What was sparse becomes abundant. The gap closes. This is true of so many things. In your own life, there might be gaps, times when you couldn't produce what you once produced, couldn't be what you once were, couldn't find the energy or resources to accumulate and build, times when everything seemed to be flowing away faster than you could gather it. But gaps close. Not always quickly, not always on the timeline you'd prefer, but they close. Eventually, conditions improve. Eventually, accumulation becomes possible again. Eventually, the black seams of achievement or peace or joy begin to form again in the rocks of your life. You don't need to force this. You don't need to hurry. You just need to continue like those scattered Triassic forests, doing what you can with the conditions you have, trusting that time and persistence will eventually shift things in your favor. Breathe slowly with this knowledge. Each breath is a small accumulation, a tiny deposit of oxygen in your blood, energy in your cells. Over time, these small accumulations become a lived life, become a story, become something solid and real. The night around you is completely peaceful now. The stars above have traced their slow arcs across the sky. The waves continue their patient work, neither rushed nor delayed, simply being what waves are, doing what waves do. Somewhere inland from where you rest, imagine one of those scattered trees. It's a conifer of some kind, perhaps an ancestor of modern pines or cypresses. It's not large or impressive, but it's alive, growing slowly, sending roots down into difficult soil, sending branches up toward the intense sun. Birds don't nest in its branches yet. There are no birds in this early Triassic world, at least not as you would recognize them. The skies are occupied by pterosaurs, those remarkable flying reptiles, though they too are still recovering, still diversifying, still figuring out how to fill the empty skies. But eventually, millions of years from now, birds will evolve and will nest in the descendants of this tree. And those trees will be more numerous, will form forests again, will create the conditions for coal to form once more. Everything is moving toward that future, slowly, patiently, inevitably. The coal gap is just a pause, not an ending. A breath before the next phrase of the song. Let yourself pause too. Rest fully. You don't always have to be producing, accumulating, achieving. Sometimes it's appropriate to have a gap, a pause, a time when the black seams don't form, when you simply exist without building monuments to your existence. The Earth doesn't judge itself for the coal gap. It simply continues through it, 1 year at a time, 1 millennium at a time, until conditions change and the forests return. You can be gentle with yourself in the same way. Whatever gaps exist in your life, whatever absences you notice, they're not failures, they're just conditions, temporary states, parts of a longer story that's still being written. The warm sand beneath you has formed itself perfectly to your body. You're not leaving footprints or impressions that will last for ages. When you eventually rise, the wind and waves will smooth everything away, leaving no trace of your presence here. And that's okay. Not everything needs to leave a trace. Not everything needs to become coal, to be preserved, to last forever. Some things are meant to be experienced and released, enjoyed, and let go, present for a moment, and then transformed into something else. The mystery of the coal gap is gentle because it has an answer, or rather several possible answers, that all point toward the same truth. Systems disrupted take time to recover. There's no instant fix, no magic solution. Just time, patience, and the slow work of life continuing. And that's not mysterious at all, really. That's just how things work, how they've always worked, how they'll always work. Rest in this knowledge. Let it ease any urgency or anxiety. You don't need to rush your own recovery, your own return to abundance. The coal gap lasted 10 million years and Earth didn't worry about it. Your gaps can last as long as they need to, and you can meet them with the same patient acceptance. The story continues with or without coal, with or without accumulation. The story is the continuation itself, the persistence, the simple fact of going on. And you're going on beautifully right now, breathing softly, resting deeply, held by the ancient earth, protected by the passage of time, safe in this moment of peace. Let the coal gap exist without needing to fill it. Let the mystery be gentle and undemanding. Let the night hold you. Everything will accumulate again when it's time. For now, just rest, just breathe, just be. Deeper now into rest, into the soft space where time moves like honey, slow and sweet and thick. You're floating in a state beyond normal waking, in a place where the boundaries between yourself and the ancient world have become gossamer thin, barely there at all. The waves continue their eternal conversation with the shore. Listen to them now. Really listen, not with effort, but with that effortless attention that comes in deep rest. Each wave is slightly different from the last, yet each follows the same essential pattern. Approach, swell, break, wash up the sand, pause, retreat, silence, approach again. This rhythm is not random, it's orchestrated by forces vast and ancient, by the gravitational embrace between Earth and Moon, by the spin of the planet itself, by the shape of the ocean basin and the contours of the shore. The moon hangs somewhere in the night sky above you, though you don't need to look for it. You can feel its presence in the tides, in the rhythm of the water, in the pulse of the planet beneath you. In this Triassic world, 252 million years ago, the moon is slightly closer to Earth than in your time. Just slightly, perhaps 30,000 kilometers, closer out of an orbital distance of nearly 400,000 kilometers. But this small difference matters. The tides are a bit stronger, a bit higher, a bit more insistent. The day is a bit shorter too, perhaps 23 hours instead of 24, because Earth spins faster, hasn't yet been slowed as much by the tidal friction that acts like a gentle brake over vast spans of time. But you wouldn't notice these differences if you didn't know to look for them. The tides still feel like tides. The day still feels like a day. The rhythms are the same rhythms, just tuned slightly differently. Your heart beats in your chest, a rhythm you rarely notice but which never stops. Let yourself become aware of it now, gently. Don't force your attention, just let it drift toward that pulse, that steady beating that has continued every moment since before you were born, that will continue every moment until your life completes its arc. Your heartbeat and the tides are connected, not physically, but metaphorically, poetically, truthfully. Both are rhythms, both are cyclic, both pulse and retreat, pulse and retreat, pulse and retreat, never stopping, defining time by their continuation. In your chest, the heart pumps blood that carries oxygen to your cells. This oxygen was created by ancient organisms not unlike the algae and cyanobacteria of this Triassic ocean. The iron in your blood, carrying that oxygen, was forged in the heart of an exploding star billions of years ago. You are made of rhythms within rhythms, cycles within cycles, ancient patterns that connect you to everything else that exists or has ever existed. Rest in this connection. You're not separate from the world, not isolated, not alone. You're woven into patterns so vast and old that they dwarf any individual worry or fear or sadness. The tide begins to retreat now, pulling back from its high point. The water that touched your feet a moment ago is now inches away, then feet away, drawn back by the moon's gravitational pull on the far side of Earth. In this Triassic world, as in your own, the tides follow a pattern. High tide, low tide, high tide, low tide, twice each day in most places, though the timing shifts by about 50 minutes each day as the moon orbits Earth. Creatures that live in the tidal zone, the area between high and low water, must be adapted to this rhythm. They must handle being submerged for hours, then exposed to air and sun for hours, then submerged again. It's a demanding existence, requiring flexibility, resilience, tolerance for change. But it's also a rich existence that the tidal zone receives nutrients from both land and sea. It's bathed in sunlight during low tide, receives oxygen and food from the water during high tide. It's a boundary zone, an in-between place. And in-between places are often the richest, the most productive, the most full of life. You too exist in boundary zones, between sleeping and waking right now, between the person you were and the person you're becoming, between memory and anticipation, between what's known and what's yet to be discovered. Boundary zones can feel uncomfortable, can feel unstable, but they're also where transformation happens, where possibilities exist, where the old and the new meet and combine into something neither could be alone. Rest in your boundary zone. You don't need to be fully one thing or another. You can be in between, liminal, transforming. This is a perfectly good place to be. The moon that pulls these Triassic tides was born, scientists believe, from catastrophe. A Mars-sized object collided with the early Earth, splashing vast amounts of material into orbit, material that eventually coalesced into the moon. Catastrophe, creating beauty. Collision, creating companionship. Destruction, creating the very thing that would stabilize Earth's axis, regulate its climate, generate tides that would stir the oceans and create tidal zones where life could flourish. The Great Dying too was catastrophe, but from it will come new forms of life, new patterns, new possibilities. The dinosaurs that will dominate the Mesozoic world haven't evolved yet, but they will, and they'll trace their ancestry to survivors of the Great Dying. Eventually, after the dinosaurs' reign ends in another great catastrophe, mammals will rise, and among them, eventually, will be your own ancestors, small and fearful at first, then gradually growing larger, more complex, more capable, until eventually they're walking upright, using tools, creating art, telling stories, dreaming of ancient oceans under ancient moons. All of this is contained in this moment, in this tide rising and falling on this Triassic shore. The future sleeps in the present like you sleep in the night, peacefully, waiting to emerge, in no hurry, certain of its eventual arrival. Your breathing has synchronized with the waves now, or perhaps it's that you've become aware of how they've always been synchronized, how all rhythms echo each other, how everything pulses together in the great symphony of existence. Breathe in as the wave approaches. Breathe out as it retreats. Breathe in with the tide rising. Breathe out with the tide falling. Your breath and the ocean's breath are one breath, separated by millions of years, but united in pattern, in rhythm, in the fundamental necessity of exchange. The moon tugs at the water in your body too, just a tiny bit. You're mostly water, after all, just like Earth's surface is mostly ocean. The same forces that move the tides move through you, imperceptibly, but really, truly. You're not separate from nature. You are nature, human-shaped, breathing-shaped, thinking-shaped, but still made of the same elements, still following the same laws, still part of the same vast system. This knowledge can be comforting. You don't have to figure everything out on your own. You don't have to control everything, manage everything, force everything. You can flow with the rhythms that already exist, can let yourself be moved by forces larger than yourself, can trust in the patterns that have held for billions of years. The Earth spins beneath you, though you can't feel the motion. It spins at roughly 1/600 kilometers per hour at the equator, slower here at whatever latitude this Triassic shore exists. Fast enough that a point on the equator completes a full circle in 23 hours, slow enough that water can cling to the surface, that atmosphere can cling to the surface, that you can rest here peacefully without being flung into space. Everything is balanced. Gravity and inertia, centripetal and centrifugal forces, the pull of the moon and the mass of the Earth, day and night, tide and tide, breath and breath. You too are balanced right now in this moment. All the forces acting on you are in equilibrium. You're exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, which is simply existing, simply resting, simply being. There's a concept in physics called resonance. It's when one rhythm matches another, when frequencies align, and suddenly small pushes can create large effects. A singer can shatter a glass by matching its resonant frequency. The moon raises tides by resonating with water's tendency to respond to gravity. Right now, you're in resonance with rest. Your body's need for recovery, your mind's need for peace. and this story's gentle rhythm have all aligned. Everything is working together to help you relax more deeply, to release more fully, to let go more completely. Don't resist this resonance. Let it amplify your rest. Let the alignment of rhythms carry you deeper into peace, into sleep if it comes, into the profound relaxation that heals and renews. The stars above you are wheeling slowly across the sky, though you can't perceive their motion directly. They're fixed in your vision, but time-lapse photography would show them drawing arcs across the heavens, all rotating around the celestial pole, the point in the sky directly above Earth's rotational axis. In your time, the North Star Polaris marks this point in the northern hemisphere. But in this Triassic time, Polaris is nowhere near the pole. A different star, or no bright star at all, marks that position because Earth's axis wobbles slowly, like a spinning top, completing one wobble every 26,000 years. Even the eternal stars are engaged in rhythms, in cycles, in slow dances that only become apparent across vast scales of time. Nothing is truly static. Everything flows, changes, cycles, returns. The universe is not a thing but a happening, not a noun but a verb, not fixed but flowing. And you are part of that flow. Not stuck, even when you feel stuck. Not static, even when nothing seems to change. Always moving, always changing, always flowing forward through time, carried by rhythms you don't have to understand to benefit from. The water at the shore's edge has retreated further now. The beach is wider, the sand damp and dark where the water was just minutes ago, drying and lightening where the water was an hour ago. This is the breath of the ocean. In and out, rise and fall. Each tide a breath that takes 6 hours. Each day 2 full breaths. Each month a deeper pattern as spring tides and neap tides alternate, as the moon waxes and wanes, as the gravitational geometry shifts and realigns. Your breath too has patterns within patterns. Each individual breath, yes. But also the way your breathing changes through the day, faster when you're active, slower when you rest, slowest when you sleep. The way it changes through your life, rapid in infancy, steadier in adulthood, sometimes more labored in old age. All of these rhythms are okay, all of them are natural, all of them are part of being alive, being embodied, being part of time's flow. Let your breath be exactly what it is right now. Don't try to control it or perfect it. Just let it be. Let it find its own rhythm, its own depth, its own perfect expression of this moment. The same with your thoughts. They too have rhythms, sometimes fast and choppy, sometimes slow and smooth, sometimes barely there at all. Right now, hopefully, they're very slow, very soft, very dreamlike. But if they're not, that's okay too. Let them be what they are. Let them follow their own tide. Everything that ebbs will flow again. Everything that flows will ebb again. This is the nature of things, the rhythm of existence, the pattern that holds when everything else dissolves. The moon continues its silent pull. The earth continues its silent spin. The ocean continues its patient exchange with the shore. And you continue your gentle descent into deeper and deeper rest, deeper and deeper peace, deeper and deeper trust in the rhythms that hold you. You don't have to stay awake to honor this story. The story honors you by giving you permission to rest, to sleep, to drift away completely if that's what you need. The tides will continue without your awareness. The moon will continue its orbit. The earth will continue its spin. And when you wake, whenever that is, they'll still be here, still following their ancient rhythms, still providing the background pattern against which all other patterns play. Rest now in the rhythm of tides and time. Let your heartbeat synchronize with the waves. Let your breath synchronize with the earth's rotation. Let your whole being synchronize with the deep, slow, reliable patterns that have held
Since the moon was born from fire, since the oceans condensed from vapor, since life first stirred in warm, shallow seas, you are held by patterns older than mountains. You are rocked by rhythms older than stones. You are safe in the great cycles that never stop, never falter, never forget how to move in their ancient, perfect ways. Rest. Breathe. Be.
The tides know the way. Chapter 6. The land remembers 120 minutes. In the deepest part of the night, in the deepest part of your rest, let's turn our gentle attention to the land itself. Not moving there, not leaving this comfortable place where you rest on the shore, but extending your awareness, your dream sight, toward the interior of this ancient continent. You're so relaxed now, so deeply at ease. Your body has melted into the sand, become part of it, supported so completely that you can't tell where you end and the earth begins. This is perfect. This is exactly where you should be. From here, from this place of perfect rest, imagine you can sense the land beyond the coast. Not see it exactly, but feel it, know it, perceive it the way you perceive your own body in the dark, without looking, just knowing it's there. The land remembers the Permian world that was lost. The soil still carries the chemistry of vanished forests. The rocks still hold fossils of creatures that will never live again. The very air moving over the surface follows patterns carved by ecosystems that no longer exist. But the land is patient. It doesn't mourn what was lost. It simply accepts what is and slowly begins to transform again. The soil in this early Triassic world is different from the rich, dark soil that will develop in later periods. It's thinner, less organic, more mineral. Without the dense root systems of abundant plants to hold it in place, it erodes easily. Rain washes it down slope. Wind picks it up and carries it away. This erosion creates the rust-colored sediments that give many Triassic rock formations their characteristic red beds. Iron in the soil oxidizes, rusts, and is deposited in layers that will eventually become stone, recording this time of sparse vegetation and vigorous erosion. Imagine the red dust on the wind carried from interior deserts toward the coast. It settles on everything, a fine powder, coating rocks and whatever sparse plants manage to grow. The world has a dusty, weathered quality, old, tired, but not dead, never dead. In the gullies and washes where seasonal streams run during the monsoons, small pools might persist for a while after the floods recede. These pools become oases, tiny refuges where life gathers. Picture one of these pools, warm in the sun, shrinking slowly through evaporation. Amphibians might gather there, the descendants of the amphibians that survived the Great Dying. They're not like the frogs and salamanders of your time. They're temnospondals, some quite large, with flat, broad heads and bodies built for life in the water, and occasional ventures onto land. They're doing what amphibians have always done, laying eggs, catching fish or invertebrates, basking in the sun, calling to each other with sounds that echo across the quiet landscape. In a world emptied of many voices, their calls carry far, unanswered, into the vast spaces. But they're alive, they're continuing, they're filling their niche, doing their part in the slow work of recovery. Your heartbeat continues its slow rhythm. You might not even notice it anymore. It's simply part of the background, part of the autonomic processes that keep you alive without any effort or awareness on your part. The land has its own heartbeat, slower than yours, slower than the tides even. It's the pulse of geological processes, uplift and erosion, deposition and compaction, weathering and renewal. These processes take millions of years to complete one cycle, but they're as reliable as your heartbeat, as necessary as your breath. The mountains in the distance, the ones you glimpsed earlier, are slowly wearing away. Each raindrop that falls on their peaks, each frost that cracks their rocks, each wind that scours their surfaces, removes a tiny amount of material. These tiny amounts accumulate into rivers of sediment flowing downhill, eventually reaching the ocean where they'll settle in layers on the seafloor. In some future age, those sediments will be compressed into stone. In some even more distant age, those stones might be uplifted into new mountains. The cycle continues, the great wheel turns. Nothing is permanent, but everything is conserved, transformed, but never lost. You too are part of cycles, though they're measured in different units. The cycle of waking and sleeping, the cycle of breathing in and breathing out, the cycle of receiving and giving, of learning and forgetting, of building up and letting go. Right now, you're in the letting go phase. Letting go of tension, letting go of worry, letting go of the need to control or understand or achieve. Simply being, simply resting, simply allowing the cycles to continue through you without resistance. The land accepts rain and drought without preference. It doesn't complain about the harsh conditions. It simply is what it is, transforms as it transforms, continues as it continues. In some areas of this Triassic landscape, volcanic activity persists. The Great Siberian Traps, the massive volcanic province whose eruptions helped trigger the Great Dying, have mostly quieted by now. But the Earth's interior is still restless, still hot, still finding ways to release its energy. In the distance, so far away you couldn't reach it even if you walked for months, a volcano might be gently smoking. Not erupting violently, just releasing pressure gradually, wisps of gas and ash rising into the sky, dispersing on the wind, settling back to Earth as fine particles that enrich the soil with minerals. Even volcanoes, those symbols of destruction, are part of the cycles of renewal. They bring nutrients from deep in the earth to the surface. They create new land. They shape the chemistry of the atmosphere and ocean. They're destructive and creative at once, neither good nor bad, simply powerful expressions of the planet's dynamic nature. You contain your own internal heat, your own inner fire. Your metabolism burns fuel to keep you warm, to keep you alive. Right now, it's running slowly, efficiently, in the low power mode of deep rest. But it's still burning, still creating the warmth you can feel if you pay attention, still doing its faithful work. Thank your body for this work, not in words necessarily, but in attention, in appreciation, in the simple act of allowing it to rest and recover and do what it knows how to do. The land is teaching you something important, though it doesn't mean to teach. It's teaching that presence is enough, that simply existing, simply being part of the system, simply continuing through the cycles is a valuable and important thing. The land doesn't try to be more than it is. A mountain doesn't wish it were a valley. A desert doesn't apologize for not being a forest. Each part of the landscape simply is what it is, accepts its role, plays its part in the larger system.
You too can simply be what you are. You don't have to be more productive, more creative, more anything. Simply being yourself, simply existing in your particular way, simply taking up your small piece of space and time is enough, is valuable, is exactly what the universe needs from you in this moment. In the sheltered valleys where water is more reliably available, the plants grow a bit more thickly. Not forests yet, but groves, clusters of trees that have found suitable conditions and taken advantage of them.
These might be conifers, early relatives of pines and spruces. Their needle-like leaves are adapted to conserve water, to survive in harsh conditions. They don't shed their needles seasonally like deciduous trees would. They keep them, protect them, use them efficiently. Around these trees, in their shade, other plants find refuge, ferns perhaps uncurling their fronds in the dimmer light, horsetails with their distinctive segmented stems, small cycads looking something like primitive palms, though they're not related to palms at all. These plant communities are small, isolated, fragile, but they exist, they persist, they provide habitat for insects, shelter for small reptiles, food for herbivores. In your own life, you might have small communities like this, places or relationships or practices that provide shelter, that offer resources that make persistence possible. They might not be vast or impressive, but they're valuable precisely because they exist, because they provide what you need when you need it. Rest in gratitude for whatever shelters you, whatever supports you, whatever makes your persistence possible. The wind moves across the land carrying seeds. Some will land in favorable spots and germinate, most won't. But the plants keep producing seeds, keep releasing them to the wind and water, keep trying, because this is what plants do. They don't know which seeds will succeed, they just keep producing them, keep giving them chances, keep participating in the great game of propagation and dispersal. You too scatter seeds in your life, probably without thinking about it. Kind words, small actions, moments of attention or creativity. You don't know which will take root, which will grow into something significant, but you keep scattering them anyway, because this is what it means to be alive, to be engaged with the world, to participate rather than withdraw. The land is so vast here, this supercontinent of Pangaea. The interior stretches for thousands of miles, far from any moderating ocean influence. In the deepest interior, conditions are extreme. Scorching hot in summer, cold in winter, dry almost always. Very little lives in those deep interior regions. They're the heart of a hostile desert, nearly lifeless, barely able to support even the hardiest organisms. But even there, in the harshest conditions, something persists. Bacteria in the soil, lichens on the rocks, perhaps small arthropods hiding in crevices, venturing out only at night when temperatures drop. Life at its most minimal, most reduced, most tenacious. These extremophiles, these lovers of extreme conditions, remind us that life can exist almost anywhere. That even when conditions seem impossible, something finds a way. That the boundaries of life are wider than we imagine. You don't have to visit those harsh interior spaces. You're safe here on the coast, where conditions are moderate, where the ocean provides its buffering influence, where recovery is proceeding more gently. But it's good to know those spaces exist. Good to know that even in the harshest times, something persists. Good to know that life doesn't give up, doesn't surrender, doesn't accept absolute limits. Your breathing is so slow now, so deep and effortless, you might not even be aware of it anymore. It's simply happening, automatically, perfectly, without any input from your conscious mind. This is how the land works too. Its processes continue automatically, driven by physics and chemistry and biology, not needing consciousness or intention or will. The land simply does what land does, and in doing so it heals, it transforms, it continues. You can trust your automatic processes the same way. Your body knows how to heal, your mind knows how to rest and integrate and process. You don't have to manage every detail. You can let the automatic wisdom of your being do its work while you simply rest, simply drift, simply allow. The night is at its deepest now. The stars are at their brightest. The world is at its quietest. Everything has settled into the profound stillness that comes in the hours before dawn, when even the most restless creatures have found rest, when even the wind seems to pause and breathe. The land lies quiet under the stars, patient and enduring, remembering what was, accepting what is, preparing without knowing it for what will be. You lie quiet too, so deeply relaxed that you've forgotten the distinction between yourself and your surroundings. You're not on the sand, you are the sand. You're not hearing the waves, you are the waves. You're not under the stars, you are the stars. This dissolution of boundaries is peaceful, not frightening. It's a return to unity, a remembering that separation is mostly illusion, that we're all made of the same elements, all following the same laws, all part of the same vast, slow, beautiful unfolding.
Rest in this unity, rest in this belonging, rest in this deep, wordless knowledge that you're home, you're safe, you're exactly where you need to be. The land remembers, but it doesn't cling to memory. The land continues, but it doesn't resist change. The land exists, but it doesn't insist on any particular form. Be like the land, remember without clinging, continue without resisting, exist without insisting. Simply be, simply rest, simply allow the great cycles to carry you, support you, transform you as they will. The land has all the time in the world, so do you. Rest.
You're floating now in that space deeper than sleep, that soft darkness where consciousness becomes something diffuse and warm, like light through closed eyelids, like sound through water, present but transformed, there but distant. Let's drift together into the world of stone, of minerals, of the slow patience of geological time. Not thinking about it, just sensing it, feeling it, becoming it in the way that only deep rest allows. The beach where your body rests is made of countless grains of sand. Each grain is a tiny piece of stone broken down by the endless work of waves and weather, tumbled smooth, carried by currents, deposited here on this shore. Pick up a handful of this sand in your mind. Let it pour through your mental fingers. Each grain was once part of a larger rock, perhaps a mountain, perhaps a boulder, perhaps a pebble. Through the patient work of erosion, it became smaller, 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 until it reached this perfect size, this grain that feels soft in aggregate, that flows like liquid, that builds castles and then surrenders to waves. The stone remembers being large. Deep in its crystal structure, its molecules remember being part of something solid and permanent. But they've accepted transformation. They've allowed themselves to become small, to become part of something flowing rather than something fixed. This is the patience of stone, not resisting what comes, not holding on to what was, simply being what it is in each moment, whether that's a mountain or a grain of sand. Your own body contains minerals, calcium in your bones, iron in your blood, sodium and potassium in your nerves, magnesium in your muscles. You're made partly of stone, of earth, of the same elements that form the ground beneath you. This makes you a relative of the rocks, a cousin of the mountains, a sibling of the sand. You share substance, you share origin, you share the patience of minerals that exist for billions of years, being transformed, being recycled, but never being lost. In this Triassic world, the stones are recording the story of recovery. Each layer of sediment that settles tells of the conditions at that moment. The red beds tell of oxidation, retry N continue edit, and erosion. The thin limestone layers tell of times when shelled creatures were abundant enough to leave their remains. The mudstones tell of quiet waters where fine particles settled slowly, undisturbed. These layers are being written now, in this moment you're dreaming through. Particle by particle, grain by grain, the story is being recorded in stone, though the stone won't fully form for millions of years more, as the weight of overlying sediments compresses these loose materials into solid rock. Imagine you can perceive this process, not quickly, but in your timeless dream state where 1,000,000 years can pass like a breath. Watch the sediments settle, watch them compress, watch them lithify, turning from loose particles into coherent stone. It happens without effort, without intention, without will, simply the physics of pressure and time doing what they always do, creating permanence from accumulation, creating record from process. Your own memories form something like this. Experiences settle into your mind like sediments. Some are fine and light, barely noticeable. Others are coarse and heavy, impossible to ignore. Over time, they compress together, forming layers, forming the stone of your history, the bedrock of your identity. But like geological stone, your memories are not unchanging. They're reinterpreted each time you access them. They're transformed by new experiences laid down on top of them. They're eroded by forgetting, by time's gentle weathering. They're solid but not static, permanent but not unchanging. Rest in this understanding. You don't have to hold on to memories too tightly. They're recorded in your stone, accessible when needed, but you don't have to carry them all at the forefront of your awareness. They can rest in their layers while you rest in this moment. In the rocks of this Triassic shore, there are fossils. Not many, not yet, but some. The hard parts of organisms that died and were quickly buried, preserved in the embrace of sediment that became stone. These fossils are messages from the past, but they're also just part of the stone now. They don't maintain their own identity, separate from the rock that holds them. They've become mineral, they're organic material, replaced atom by atom with stone, perfect copies in a more permanent medium. One day, your body too will return to the earth. Not today, not for many years hopefully, but eventually. And when it does, the minerals you borrowed from the planet will return to circulation. The calcium will perhaps become part of a shell, then a limestone, then a mountain. The iron will perhaps become part of soil, then a plant, then another animal. Nothing is truly possessed. Everything is borrowed. Everything is temporary custody of particles that have existed since the universe began and will exist until it ends if it ends. This thought isn't morbid, it's peaceful. You don't have to hold on to anything forever. You're just a temporary arrangement of atoms, and so is everything else. All are equal in their impermanence. All are connected in their shared substance. The stones on the beach, the larger ones that aren't yet sand, are smooth and rounded. The waves have tumbled them endlessly, knocking off their rough edges, polishing their surfaces, making them beautiful through the patient work of water. You too are being polished by experience, by time, by the tumbling of life. What seems like difficulty might just be the waves doing their work, smoothing your rough edges, making you more yourself, more essential, more beautiful in the way that smooth stones are beautiful. Don't resist the tumbling, don't fear the waves. They're not trying to destroy you. They're trying to reveal you, to polish you, to help you become the smoothest, truest version of yourself. Deep beneath the surface where you rest, far below the sand and soil, the bedrock extends downward. This is older stone, formed in earlier eras, carrying the record of times before the Great Dying, before the Permian, back and back through the Carboniferous, the Devonian, the Silurian, the Ordovician, the Cambrian, and beyond into the Precambrian eons when life was simple and the world was young. All of that history is beneath you right now, layer upon layer, like pages in a book made of stone, though the pages are out of order because of folding and faulting, because of the way the Earth's crust moves and deforms and rearranges itself over time. But the record is there. The story is preserved. Nothing is truly lost. Everything that ever happened on this planet is written somewhere in stone, waiting to be read by anyone who learns the language of rocks. Your own deep history is within you too. The story of your ancestors, written in your DNA. The story of all life, written in the similarities between your cells and the cells of every other organism. The story of the universe, written in the very atoms that compose you. You carry libraries within you. You are a record as much as you are a being. You are a story as much as you are a storyteller. Rest in this knowledge. You're part of something so much larger than yourself, a narrative that began billions of years ago and will continue billions of years into the future. Your chapter is important, but it's just one chapter. and the book will continue with or without your anxiety about it. The volcanic rocks in the distant mountains, the ones you sensed earlier, are igneous rocks born from fire, from molten magma that cooled and crystallized. They're different from the sedimentary rocks that form in layers, different from the metamorphic rocks that form when existing rocks are transformed by heat and pressure. But all three types are stone. All three are patient. All three record their origins in their structure, their composition, their crystal patterns. All three eventually break down and become sediment, which becomes sedimentary rock, which might be buried and heated and become metamorphic rock, which might be melted and become igneous rock again. The rock cycle. Endless transformation. Nothing staying the same but nothing being lost. Just change, just transformation, just the great wheel turning. You're in your own cycles too. Times when you feel solid and fixed like sedimentary rock. Times when you feel transformed by pressure like metamorphic rock. Times when you feel melted down and remade like igneous rock. All of these phases are natural. All are necessary. All are part of being a dynamic, living being in a dynamic, living universe. The patience of stone is not the patience of enduring suffering. It's the patience of accepting transformation. Stones don't suffer when they're broken down into sand. They simply transform. They simply continue in a new form. When you're broken down by life, when you feel reduced to grains, remember the sand. Remember that being small is not the same as being worthless. Remember that grains of sand build beaches, form dunes, create landscapes. Remember that transformation is not loss but change, and change is the nature of all things. Your breathing has become almost imperceptible now. Just the slightest movement of air, in and out, like the breath of the earth itself, like the slow exchange of gases between land and sky, between ocean and atmosphere, between rock and life. This is perfect. This is exactly right. You've slowed down to geological time, to the pace at which stones change, to the rhythm of deep planetary processes. In this state, there's no rush, there's nowhere to be but here, nothing to do but exist. No way to fail because simply being is succeeding. The stars above you, those distant suns, are also patient in their way. They burn for millions or billions of years, fusing hydrogen into helium, releasing the energy that allows them to shine, slowly consuming themselves but taking so long to do it that they seem eternal from any human perspective.